There is one mistake that many people make without knowing it, and it can change everything forever. In this story, you will hear about a man who went to hell and got a message from Jesus about this mistake. Welcome to Gate of Eternity, where we talk about amazing things that happen beyond this world. We share stories about getting saved, hope, and mysteries. If you have not done it yet, please click subscribe and keep going on this trip with us. I hope you will stay because every story I tell you will help you learn and find more meaning in your life. Now sit down and listen to the end. It will be a good time for us to share together. My name is Mark, and I am 55 years old. I grew up in a family that loved God very much. Every day of my life was always about God. My mother showed me when I was young to pray every morning and every night, and I kept doing that my whole life. I think of myself as a good man, one of those believers who tries to follow all the rules and really believes in God's kindness and love. I never questioned that God forgives us, and I never really thought hell was real. It seemed impossible to me that a God who loves us would send people to suffer forever. To me, the fire of hell was just a picture used to scare bad people and non-believers, not a real place for faithful people like me. I thought that praying, going to church on Sundays, and living by Christian rules was enough to get me into heaven. Over the years, that belief became very strong in my heart. I was not scared of hell because I was sure it was not real, and if it was, it surely did not apply to me. I was sure that God in His great goodness would save all good Christians like me. I never thought that this certainty would be broken. It was a spring Saturday afternoon, one of those days that feels perfect in every way. The sun was bright, but a soft wind made the air nice. I was at a wedding for my old friend David. We had known each other since we were kids, and even though life kept us apart for a while, we stayed close. That day was special for him, and for me too. The wedding was simple but touching in a garden, with flowers and green trees everywhere. David and his wife said their promises to each other. After the wedding, there was a party. Everything seemed perfect. The tables were set up under big white tents with flower decorations. Music played softly, and people laughed and talked while eating good food. I felt calm and peaceful. I looked at the happy people around me and could not help but thank God for my life. I prayed often and felt safe because of my faith. Then came the time for the cake. David and his wife cut the wedding cake while everyone clapped, and I was one of the first to get a piece. It was a cake with layers covered in white frosting and chocolate pieces. I did not think much about it, even though part of me knew I should. Be careful. I have a very bad allergy to peanuts, but I rarely think about it. And at that moment, caught up in the party and excitement, I ate a big piece without checking what was in it. The taste was great, but right away I felt a small itch in my throat. At first I ignored it, thinking it was just a small problem, but after a few minutes the itch became a tight feeling in my throat. Breathing became harder, and I started to feel my heart beating fast in my chest. A tight feeling grabbed my chest, and breathing became harder and harder. I looked around, trying not to let my fears show. I did not want to cause trouble at my friend's wedding. I tried to stay calm, thinking it would go away. It is not that bad, I kept telling myself, but I could feel something inside me breaking down. The minutes went by, and my breathing got worse. I tried to get up from my chair, but my legs felt weak. Then I fell down. There was only darkness, a complete, thick darkness. I no longer felt my body. I no longer felt my heart beating. Nothing. Complete emptiness. I was no longer in the garden. I was no longer at the wedding. It felt like I was floating in a place without time or space. Then suddenly a light showed up far away. It was not a normal light. It was white, but it seemed almost alive, moving warm. It pulled me toward it, though I was not sure how I was moving forward. I felt drawn to the light without fighting it. As I got closer, the light grew brighter, and inside it a shape started to form. I could not see the details, but there was something familiar about the presence. It was great, but at the same time comforting. The fear I had felt in the darkness was slowly changing into curiosity. Mark, said the shape in a deep but calm voice. It is time for you to see what you have always said no to. That voice went through me, not just in my ears. It was like every word went into my spirit. I felt sudden peace, but also growing worry. The feeling of being judged was coming like a truth I could no longer ignore. You never believed in hell, the voice went on. You always thought it was a made-up story to scare bad people. Now I will show you what you have chosen not to see. In a moment, the place around me changed. The light went away, and what was left was a horror I could never have imagined. In front of me opened a deep hole. Flames as tall as mountains came up from the dark, cracked ground. The air was thick with smoke and ash, and the heat was choking. The sky above me was black with red lightning that cut through the darkness. But what really made me shake were the shapes I saw in the flames. Men and women covered by fire screaming in pain. Their cries were heartbreaking, like the pain they were going through had no end. Some reached up like they were looking for a way out, but there was no hope in their eyes. Others twisted around, consumed by suffering I could not even begin to understand. But the thing that shocked me the most was knowing some of them. They were Christians, people I had known who had prayed with me, who went to church every Sunday. There were faces I knew among those lost souls, faces of people who, like me, had believed they were saved. I saw pastors, church leaders, and people who had served the Christian community for years, all covered in flames. Their hands together like they were still praying, but with no answer. "Why are they here?" I asked in a shaking voice, not able to look away from that hellish scene. "Because like you, they lived in pride," the shape answered. "They prayed, but they never truly opened their hearts. They judged others, believing that their faith alone was enough to save them. But they ignored the sin hiding in their own hearts. They lived believing that my forgiveness came automatically without ever thinking about the cost of their pride." The words hit deep. I felt like I had been struck by a truth I had never wanted to face. The prayers I had said all my life, the things I had done, everything now seemed empty without real meaning. I had always thought that just praying was enough to be forgiven, that just believing promised me a place in heaven. Yet the souls I saw in front of me had been Christians just like me, and now they were suffering forever. As I kept watching those suffering souls, I started to see scenes. It was like part of me could see the sins they had done in life. Every Christian in that place had lived believing that their sins were small, not important, because their faith would save them anyway. One of them was a man I had known at church, a leader everyone respected. Yet now I saw him on his knees in the flames, his hands up in desperate begging. He had lived a religious life, yes, but in his heart he had always judged others. He believed he was better because he followed the rules exactly, but he had never shown true care or mercy. He had blamed people who did not live up to his standards, forgetting the humility that God requires. Another was a woman I knew. She went to church every Sunday, prayed loudly, but behind that religious front was a life of fakeness. She had hurt others for personal gain, sure that just asking for forgiveness would clear her. But there was no real sorry in her heart, only fear of punishment. And so one after another I saw Christians who, like me, had believed they were saved just by their faith, ignoring the true meaning of God's love and justice. The pictures playing in front of my eyes were so clear and harsh that I felt overwhelmed. Every soul I saw suffering in the flames had lived as a Christian. They prayed, read the Bible, went to services, but there was always something missing, something that had condemned them. "It is not enough to say prayers and go to church, Mark," said the shape beside me. "Many of those you see here lived believing that just showing faith in front of others would give them salvation. But faith is not just words or outside actions. It is daily action of the heart. It is living by the love I have taught, but also by justice." The voice was full of care, but also with a force that could not be denied, like it was teaching me something I could no longer ignore. "But how is this possible? These people were faithful, they were good Christians," I said, still not able to fully understand what I was seeing. "How can they be here? I did not think Christians could end up here." "They are here because they forgot what is most important, true sorry and humility," God answered. "Pride blinded them. They never truly confessed their sins in their hearts. They never gave up the pride that made them feel better than others. They prayed, yes, but not honestly. They prayed to be seen, to feel righteous, but inside they never let my love change their souls." I felt panic wash over me. If these people had ended up in hell, what chance did I have? I had lived like them, sure that my prayers, my faith, would be enough to save me. I had done exactly what I now saw in them, judged, ignored my own mistakes, and taken for granted that God would forgive me anyway. The screams of the lost souls cut through my heart. I looked at their faces, twisted in pain, looking for signs of hope, but there were none. They were trapped in eternal suffering. The flames did not destroy their bodies, did not turn them to ashes. Instead, they seemed to continue their endless suffering. At one point, I noticed a certain man. I had known him well. He had been a preacher, one of those who always spoke with great excitement about God's love. He had led many people to faith. Yet now he was there among the flames with a look of eternal horror on his face. I remembered how in life he bragged about his works and how much praise he got from his church. "Him too," I whispered. "Him too," answered the voice, because despite his good works, there was no humility in his heart. He preached love, but lived in judgment. He silently blamed those who did not follow his example, believing himself to be better than them. He did not look for my forgiveness, but only the good feeling that came from the praise of people. The words hit me like a whip. How many times had I silently judged others, believing myself to be better because I prayed every day, because I followed God's law as I understood it? How many times had I looked at others with dislike, sure that my faith was cleaner than theirs? I kept walking among those suffering souls, not able to look away. I saw faces that had lived in comfort, who had used faith as a mask to cover their sins. Some were religious leaders, others regular people, but all had made the same mistake. They had fooled themselves into the false safety of their faith, thinking that believing was enough to be saved. Pride is poison for the soul, Mark, said God, stopping my thoughts. Many Christians have fallen into this trap, believing that their faith made them safe from judgment. But I see the heart, and the proud heart cannot come near me. I was shaken. I felt like every word was aimed at me. I had always been sure that my devotion was real, but now I started to wonder if I too was living in the trap God was talking about. But how can I avoid falling into this temptation? How can I be sure I am not living in pride? I asked, my voice shaking. God stayed quiet for a moment, like giving me time to truly think about that question. Humility is the key, Mark. The humility to know that you are not perfect, that you need my forgiveness every day, not just with words, but with your heart. The humility not to think yourself better than anyone, not to judge others, but to love them as I have taught you. And most of all, live with constant knowledge that you may not be worthy of my judgment, because no one is. No person, no matter how religious, can save himself alone. I felt tears come to my eyes. The idea of living knowing that I was always between salvation and hell scared me. But at the same time, it made me realize how blind I had been until that moment. I had lived without ever truly questioning myself, without ever doubting that my faith was enough. Then God led me to another part of hell. Here the fire did not burn as clearly as in the area I had just left. It was more hidden, but the pain was just as terrible. This place was kept for Christians who had lived in assumption and pride, believing that their faith made them better than others. It was a different hell, of suffering, not only physical, but also spiritual. Here I saw people forced to constantly relive their lives, every action, every thought. Their suffering was constant awareness of the chances they had had to truly repent, but had wasted. Every Christian in this place lived with eternal awareness of how close they had been to salvation, but had moved away because of their pride. Their screams were not only of physical pain, but of deep spiritual agony or regret that ate them from within. I saw people in despair trying to repent, but it was too late. Their sorry was no longer valid. Judgment had been passed, and now they were condemned to eternal suffering. One of them, an old man, looked me in the eyes as I came near. I was like you, he said, his voice broken by suffering. I thought I was saved. I thought my faith was enough. But I judged. I lived believing I was better than others, and now I am. Here, I could not stand his look. It was full of regret, a regret that I knew was eternal. But the thing that scared me most was how similar his story was to mine. How many Christians, I wondered, were condemned to this place because they had lived in assumption, thinking they would never have to face the possibility of hell. The divine shape beside me looked at me. Do you understand now, Mark? Do you see now why hell is not only for declared sinners? Many Christians end up here not because they did not pray, not because they did not believe, but because they never truly gave up the pride in their hearts. They thought their faith would save them automatically without doing the true spiritual work of changing their souls. Those words burned inside me. I felt like everything I had always believed had fallen apart. I had prayed. I had lived a Christian life. And yet now I understood that I had always ignored something basic: humility. I had never truly understood what it meant to be humble before God. But there is still hope for you, Mark, God said gently, breaking the silence that had covered me in those thoughts. You are here to learn to understand what many ignored until it was too late. I have brought you here not to condemn you, but to give you a second chance. In a moment, the hellish place disappeared. I found myself in a hospital bed with the sound of machines watching my heart and breathing. My hands were shaking and my body was weak, but I was alive. My wife was sitting next to me, her eyes red with tears. She had saved me with the help of the doctors, but deep down I knew I had not just been brought back by them. God had given me a second chance. My body had returned, but my soul had changed. I had seen hell, and I had understood how close I had come to eternal punishment. Now I knew that being a Christian in name was not enough, nor were prayers empty of meaning. I needed to live every day with humility to truly repent of my sins and to give up the pride that had been with me all my life. Now every day of my life is lived with new awareness. Every prayer I say comes with honest examination of my heart, looking inside myself for those sins I had ignored before. Faith is no longer a certainty, but a path that needs constant attention. I know I am not perfect, and now I also know that my salvation depends on my ability to recognize this truth. It is not enough to believe. It is not enough to pray. It is not enough to go to church. True faith requires living with humility and awareness of one's sin without ever taking it for granted. Hell is real, and it is a place where many Christians, just like me, have ended up because they ignored the truth about what it really means to be religious. This is the truth I want everyone to know. The sin of pride can lead even Christians to hell. Do not ignore this lesson. Repent every day honestly and live with humility before God. Only then can we hope to avoid the fate I saw with my own eyes. Thank you so much for staying until the end. I would really love to hear what you think, so please leave a comment and share your thoughts with me. If you like this story, do not forget to subscribe and share it with those who might find value in this message. Together we can make a difference.